Welcome to your Daily Dose. My name is Robert, and I'm here with Christine Grmolyes. I said it right, I think.
You did, yes.
Christine,
Great.
thanks so much for joining me. I had the pleasure recently of meeting you with our outreach regarding Boys of Summer, and you were kind enough to present Boys of Summer shortstop for your community. If you don't mind, can you share with us how that screening went, what you thought of the film, and maybe what the folks who watched it thought of it?
Absolutely. So I run a support group once a month. I run two support groups, but one specifically for those with Parkinson's and their caregivers. So it's a combination. And so I was able to show the film to the short show the film to the support group this week, and it was great. I thought it was great. The audience that was there thought it was great. I think there was lots of great messages of hope. And I was on the board of the Parkinson's Association locally in Northern California for about 7 years, and one of the things we always talked about was how do we help people live with Parkinson's, and it met that theme. That there is life, and we chatted a little bit about that after the film with the support group.
Well, first off, thank you for all of the work you do. The Parkinson's Association of Northern California has been a great friend to us. Harry
Yes.
Starkey is the one who made sure to get it out to everybody. And yes, as you mentioned, I think did we meet previously at maybe Elk Grove? Was there at a leadership meeting a couple of years back? Were you at that?
Possibly.
I think,
I'm at a lot of different meetings with
yeah.
Pink. So
No, I know. I get it. Sure. So at any rate, you're doing great work in the community. And again, thank you for your work with Pank. And in specifics, you do this work for this support group. Are you a registered nurse yourself, or what is your
I'm
line?
not. I'm a certified geriatric care manager.
There you go.
So been in the field of senior care for over 25 years. And so have been really, it's been my mission to serve folks who are older, struggling with disease processes.
Yeah.
Served on the Alzheimer's Association board as well as their Oro Caregiver Resource Center as well. And pray.
Well, what you said earlier really touched me, and I thank you for it. You got to the theme of Boys of Summer and really of my nonprofit too, yes, and exercise, which is how do we live well, right? There's an
Right.
awful lot of focus, and understandable to a degree, of disease management, right?
Right.
And that's a necessary part of things, whether it is medication, whether it is appointments, whether it is exercise, certainly, and that can cross the social boundary. Beyond that, though, what I find, and I wonder what you feel about this, is sometimes people lose their identity and they become seen as the disease, not as a person. And not only by others, and I see heartbreaking examples of friends and family who detach from people who are dealing with chronic illness like Parkinson's,
Mhm.
but the person themselves, they, they,
Right.
they lose touch of what they're capable of. Do you notice that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talk a lot about that in the group, and also have had some great speakers who talk about, some of the things like apathy that happens with Parkinson's, and how to really fight that and continue to live your life and not, like you say, not become the diagnosis, but still find the ways to achieve things that you can with the disease. And you just hit it on, out of the out of the park, so to speak, with your video, just showing folks. And it's interesting because my support group the month before, some of the things we talk about is how people can live with Parkinson's. And a gentleman told a story of recently taking his wife, who is mostly in a wheelchair, on a cruise. He was bound and determined, and he shared all the different things that occurred and how to mitigate those things, how to, get the proper handicap suite. Nobody knew that there's two types of handicap suites on a cruise. I cruise all the time. I didn't know. And so sharing stories about how people can still travel, can still do the things on their bucket list as best they can as the disease progresses. And literally, I had one of my support group attendees unfortunately miss on Tuesday, but we had a long chat on Wednesday. And her husband, who's the one with Parkinson's, really has had his mindset on going to Argentina, which is his homeland,
Mm.
later this year, and started waffling on that. And she was adamant that this is a dream that he's had and she's had, and they're going to find a way to make it work, even if it's, not joining in all the activities that were planned, but altering things and still living life.
That's really it. And you're right that, that threshold is something I've been dealing with since the first Boys of Summer documentary, way back in 2004 when Dad was early onset. There was a point that was a really rigorous trip. We did 30
Right.
Major League ballparks in 2 months. That was very, you better be fully on it for that. And we were, and Dad was still driving then and fully ambulatory. But even then, I was starting to consider, gosh, when am I pushing this too far? And the second film, we did much less. There wasn't as much, although we did have a push event where we went camping, and my dad wasn't sure he wanted to, but then it was his grandson's first time camping. He's like, I don't want to miss this. And it was
Right.
a difficult night, but at the same time, he said, I'm so glad I went. He said, I wouldn't want to miss this. It was unbelievable to see his 5-year-old grandson first time camping, exploring the world. And now in this film, a couple of years later, he gets to see Giuseppe experiencing ballparks like this, and at a high level experiencing
Right.
ballparks.
Yes.
But as you saw in the film, he almost said no. In fact, he did say no, and then he reconsidered. And you mentioned the wheelchair, for instance. That was something he was like, I don't know if I want to do that. And it's like, really, you're going to miss out on this because you don't want to be in a wheelchair? And
Right.
and that's not to downplay the real feelings about, like, my dad struggled with using a walking device, as we talked about in the film, right? You
And
deal
I
with that sort
loved
of
how
stuff.
you handled, I loved how you handled that. And,
Yeah.
it really kind of helped me frame some of it with some of the folks I work with, just that, you know, people are going to be looking at you more if they notice your disability without having that device. And I struggled with it with my mom too. She fought that walker as much as, she possibly could. But the more we talked about it as her way of being independent and seeing that, people don't look at you different. And, it's definitely some learning lessons. I went through a couple knee surgeries. I unfortunately had a complication. So within 30 days, had two major knee operations back in October. And, I had to use a walker, and we had a trip planned, and I had to use a wheelchair. And it was humbling, but it also made me really think about what, many of the clients we work with are experiencing. But it's getting past that and recognizing it's your tool to live your life.
I think you used the right word there, humbling, because it's one thing for us as care partners, family members, to look and say, here's the reasonable thing. It's another to be in the chair yourself. And
Hmm.
I mean, my sister and I have these conversations all the time and say, there's a good chance I'm going to be a real pain in the butt. I don't just mean me, but she too, when we're older.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
like, yeah. And my aunt and uncle, who they dealt a lot with my grandmother, who had a significant number of issues, they talk to, and they're talking to their kids. They're going, we're going to let you know, we're probably going to be really difficult.
Just be ready.
Yeah. And again, they can say that. And gosh, there's just no way to know until you're actually going through it.
Right.
Right. And I mean, I think it's that way for the person, because you heard in this film, my dad say, the really startling line to me, I don't know if it's worth living if I can't have my independence. And I cut the interview there because we began to talk about things that I wasn't ready to share yet. Things like, he wanted to talk about assisted suicide and things. And that hasn't been our pathway, but I gave him the ear for it because he wanted to at least understand what worth living is and dying with dignity is. Um,
Hmm.
and now, I mean, he is wheelchair bound, and it's much tougher. However, I still see him embracing life, and it's
Yeah.
different than he would have imagined. That was what, 7, 8 years ago in the film, and yet he's still living, and I'm
Yeah.
so proud of him.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, just to see his spirit. And yeah, that was a touching point in the movie. I can only imagine what it felt like for you when he said that.
I,
But
I I've seen it many times, and I know I do this little look where you could see me gulp. I go, and I don't want to say anything, but it was just that moment of, oh, what is he talking about? Is he talking about this on camera?
right. Oh my gosh, yeah. No. But good to have had him open that conversation. What does that mean for him? Yeah.
Yeah. How many people did you have in your screening? Do you know?
We had a smaller group this month, but I would say about 15.
That's great.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
did you happen to notice where there's some laughs and moments of engagement? Good. That means
Yeah.
so much because I see so many films. Here's the problem I see. They're the kind of Parkinson stories that to me, and this is my opinion, of course, that make us go awe and pitiful. And I'm like, we got to deal with the hard stuff without saying pity because nobody's going to care about the people if we're only pitying them, right?
Right.
We need to see them as both, struggling realistically and resilient for what they can be. Yes, we need help. We need finances. We need, resources, all that stuff. And we're strong. It's a yes
Right.
and, right? And so that's a big deal to me. I'm glad that came across.
Oh, absolutely. And I think there was some chuckles, there was some laughter, there was some moments of, oh yeah, we get it,
Yeah.
understanding some of the struggles, but also understanding the joy, and the importance of having these moments, not just for the person who's living with Parkinson's, but for you and your family and your son to have those memories.
Well, and you mentioned you've been working in this field for 25 years, I think you said, right?
Yeah.
Can you see the universal opportunity of this? Because although it's Parkinson's, it's really aging. It's really family, right? I mean, that's what we're trying to get across with this film. Of course, Parkinson's is our main thing, but we're trying to appeal to everybody. The message has been about get out with your family, spend time, do the things, that are meaningful. Does that come across?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I see it as any chronic illness or aging issue that, yeah. And you see the people who do try to still live their life, even though it's a struggle, it's a fight, but they do it with such grace and humor and spirit. And then the people who, go into that apathy and that depression and have a struggle getting out of it. So, there's some choice in that. There's some, you know, um, opportunities for some help with mental health issues when it is, clinical depression. But, we see so many people living and aging with such grace and love in life.
That's awesome. And I don't know how much of it came across. I was going to ask you, the two things that we offer at our nonprofit are improvisation and storytelling. Do those things, I mean, do they make sense to you as a geriatric, care giver? Does that, can you see how those can help with psychosocial emotional things?
Absolutely. I think any opportunity for engagement. I mean, I'm a big proponent of that. And obviously bringing humor into the engagement is a wonderful thing. So, I several years ago had to move my mom into assisted living. She at the time had had a minor stroke. Ultimately, in the end, she may have had Parkinson's. At our last neurological visit before she passed away, he kind of brought it up. I wasn't quite sure. We weren't ready for meds, and she ended up passing away before we went for a follow up. But after she moved into her assisted living, her scores on her cognitive testing went up 6 points. Her neurologist was amazed. He was like, I don't understand what happened. And I said, I do. She went from being isolated after COVID in her home, just seeing us because there was a lot of fear, even when they started opening things up. But she now was going and eating with somebody, in the dining room with her friends, 3 meals a day. She was doing 2 or 3 activities a day. She was engaged again. And so I had no doubt that was part of what really helped her cognition and her spirit.
I mean, what's difficult about that medically, and it's certainly been my research problem, it was my PhD problem, is measuring that is
Mhm.
extraordinarily difficult, right? I
It
mean,
is.
the idea, I can't tell you how many how many different clinical trials I did setups for and didn't get approval because they just wouldn't pass IRB based on, the model. It's like, yeah, but you can't measure that. It's like, yeah, I know. Um, but
Darn it.
but we know it. The common sense of it is that social engagement, and really the other big word for me is play. The idea that we, at any age, not only can, but should be, and I don't often use should, but should be playing for wellness, because that childlike spirit revives us mentally, physically, spiritually, reminds us that, oh yeah, I get to laugh, I get to be silly, I can be absurd even, whatever it is, dress up or play or talk or, all of that's within us. And yet for some reason we mute that generally.
Right. Yeah. No, I remember showing up they were having a party at the assisted living where my mom was. I can't remember if it was an Easter time or whatever, but I show up and my mom has a face painting on. And my mom never would have done that. But here she was, and she was laughing with her favorite caregiver. And,
Mhm.
she was like a little girl enjoying life. And, my mom wasn't always that playful, but she really was enjoying that opportunity that they were giving her. So,
Well, I think everyone's got a story, and I've got a woman who's the co-founder for me in Yes and Exercise, a woman with Parkinson's, who talks about her childlike experience with her grandmother and being told to stop being silly, and she basically did. As a little kid, stop being silly. So to the point when we play in improv gibberish, and that's where you speak a fake language, she can't do it because that training is so ingrained in her from 65, 70 years ago of a
right,
grandmother shaming her
for
for
being
expressing.
silly.
Yes. What
And
an amazing burden to
yeah,
carry, right?
really, really amazing. Yeah. I mean, I think, that long-term stuff that our family or our parents told us, it sticks.
It
And
does.
that's unfortunate for things like that, right?
Well, that's where people like yourself and the work we do, hopefully we can honestly, I think it's rehabilitation. It's play rehabilitation,
Right.
giving people a safe and brave space to explore and become the person that they maybe even forgot existed or never knew because it got,
Hmm.
cut off early, right?
Yeah. And so many people don't take that opportunity to laugh and be silly. And yeah, I just am asking the folks in my office how many of them want to go, but we have the Comedy in the Barn that is a fundraiser for PAINT coming
Yeah.
up in April. And it's the third annual. And so trying to get, as many folks from my office to attend and just have a night of laughing and fun.
You forget, I don't mean you, we forget what laughter means to, I
Mm,
mean, and by the way, the research supports the benefit, the health
right,
benefit, practical,
right.
both physiological as well as mental, emotional, and all that. It's, you can even fake your way to it. I don't know if you ever heard of laughter yoga, but I mean
Right.
that right. They bring it forward. It has incredible benefits. But if you ask people about sometimes they'll really not be able to recall the last time they laughed
Right.
because life
Exactly.
gets that hard. And I'm not
It is.
discounting that. It does for all of us.
Yeah, which makes it even more important to have that opportunity to laugh, especially right
Schedule
now in our
laughter.
world, right?
Yeah, you're right. You've got to schedule. It's got to be an outing. It's got to be a dedicated thing because otherwise, if you leave it as presumed, it cannot show up.
Right. Absolutely.
Christine, I can't thank you enough for your time. Is there anything else you wanted to add that I missed, either about your work or about the film or anything else?
I don't think so. I just applaud you for the work you're doing and thank your dad for our support group and myself, for having that spirit and fighting and living life and sharing his story. That takes a lot of humility in itself. So,
You're welcome.
and
And
you.
I put that out there for him all the time to remember because, legacy is important to all of us. And I want to make sure that he knows that, he has not gone through this suffering for naught. He has done a great job and he continues to be so generous to allow me to capture and share this the way he does. So thank you for noting that.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, Christine, you be well. We'll see you on the next Daily Dose, everybody.